Okay, artists, today we are going to make a clay cat. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to take your ball of clay and you're going to want to use the heel of your hand. This is the heel of your hand. You're going to want to use the heel of your hand to push that ball of clay into your burlap. And you're pushing it into your burlap so that you can create what is called a slab. And a slab is a flat, even piece of clay. So as you're pushing, you want to try to push evenly on all of the sides and try to aim for your best to keep that slab of clay in a round shape. If your clay is in a round circular shape, it's going to be easier to do your next steps. And you want your clay to be about as thick as a cookie. So if I flip that around, I can see if it's even or not. It's pretty good. Once I have flattened the slab, I am going to carefully peel that burlap from the clay and I'm going to have some texture. The texture is how something feels, so this kind of feels a little bit rough. So I'm going to put that clay circle on top of my canvas with the texture facing up. And mine is pretty round, but if you are struggling with keeping a circle as you flatten it, you can take your bamboo skewer and you can kind of draw lightly and imagine where that circle might be, and you can just push that bamboo skewer all the way down to your canvas and trim some of that clay off if yours is not a circle. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just the base of our cat shape should be pretty round. And I want you to save that extra clay because we're going to need it for our next step. Now that you have your round shape of a slab, you're going to be cutting out a rectangle shape at the top. And this rectangle shape is basically going to be where the cat's ears are. So you don't want to do a square because a square isn't going to give us enough room for our cat's head and ears. So you want a rectangle shape, and I like to kind of draw it first before I cut just to make sure I like it, because if I don't like the way it looks, I can just kind of put my finger over and erase it. But I think that that's a pretty good shape. It's going to give me enough room on either side for my cat's ears. So when you're happy with the rectangle shape, you're going to push that skewer all the way down to your canvas. You don't have to push so hard that you break the stick, but just hard enough to cut. And I want you to set that piece of clay aside because you are going to be using it. Now that I have cut that shape away, I can see some rough edges of clay, so I don't want to use too much water, but I'm going to dip my fingertip into a little bit of water, and I'm just going to run my finger along the edge of that clay just to make sure that I smooth out any of the rough edges from when I cut and trimmed it. Because when these get fired in the kiln is kind of like an oven, it fires the clay at about 2,000 degrees, the rough edges of your clay will become sharp. So you want to make sure that they're smooth. But you don't want to completely soak your clay in water because then it will be too wet. Now that I have the head and the ears of my cat, I'm going to take my extra clay and I'm going to kind of ball it up. I can roll it between my palm to ball it, or you can roll it on your canvas to ball it. I need to use this clay for eyes and a nose. So I'm going to go ahead and divide that ball of clay in half. That should be enough for my eyes. This is pretty big, so I'm going to ball that. Take that half that I made, cut it in half again. And these two smaller pieces, like I said, you can roll them in your palm, but mine is a little bit occupied with a cast right now, so I'm going to use my palm and roll it onto my canvas until I get two, and they can be like balls of clay, but you don't need them to be perfect, because after you get the balls of clay, you're just going to take your thumb and fingers and smush them down so that they are flat circles. And this is what we're going to make for our huge cat eyes. Now, this is not good enough. If I just put my piece of clay right on top of each other, they're not going to stick. So what I like to think about is when you brush your teeth, you're helping to keep your teeth from falling out. So you're going to use a toothbrush on clay to help your clay from falling off. So once you have two eye shapes that you're happy with, you're going to take your toothbrush, it's going to be dipped into a little bit of water, remember not soaking wet, and you are going to toothbrush the back of the eye, and you're also going to toothbrush where you want it to go. And then both of those toothbrush edges are going to be put together, and you don't want to squish it, you don't want to flatten it, but you want to put enough pressure that you know that it's secure. So for each of those eyes, toothbrush the back of it and toothbrush where you want it to go. This is called score and slip. And then I want you to push those eyes together. And if you want one big eye, one small eye, if you want to kind of make a crazy looking cat, that's up to you. But we definitely have to toothbrush our clay to make sure that it sticks together. So now I have two eyes of clay. Now, if you think about an eyeball has three parts. We've got the white part of our eye, we have the iris, which is the colored part, and we have a black pupil. So I want to take some of my clay, and I want this next ball of clay to be smaller than that first one. So I'm just going to divide that in half. And I'm going to divide it in half again. So I have two smaller pieces of clay. These smaller pieces of clay, I'm going to repeat the same thing that I did for the eye shape. So I'm going to roll it into a ball. I'm going to flatten it. And I should have two smaller circles that will fit inside of the white part of my cat's eyes. Remember, when you attach two pieces of clay, you need to use your toothbrush. So I am going to toothbrush the back. And I'm going to toothbrush where I want it to go. And I'm going to push and secure. Whoops, I pushed a little too hard, so I had a little too much water. I need to redo that one. So I'm going to roll it back up into that ball of clay that I had. I'm going to flatten it. So you can see if you put too much water on it, it gets a little too sticky. There we go. Now I can push the iris down. So I like that my right eye is a little bit bigger than my left eye. I kind of like that it looks a little bit like a crazy cat. So I am pretty happy with that. And then carefully lift mine up so you can see. So I have the white part of the eye and the iris part of the eye attached to my cat. To make the pupil, you're going to use the flat part of your bamboo stick. So not the sharp part for cutting, but the flat part. I'm just going to poke a hole, and I don't want to poke all the way through my cat, but I definitely want to maybe make it deep enough so that it looks like a pupil. And I can move it around a little bit to help me get that extra wet clay out of the way. I'm going to do the same thing here. So now I have two eyes on my cat that has the white part, the color part, and the pupil. The next thing I need to add to my cat is a nose. So I'm going to take a little bit of my extra clay and I'm going to roll it into a ball, and I'm going to show you how you can make a triangle shape for your cat's nose. So if I take that ball of clay and if I squish two ends together, and I almost want to pinch to make a triangle, so I squished and I pinched, and then I can take another finger and flatten. I have made a triangle shape that I can use for my cat's nose. And the cat's nose could go like this, or it could go straight up and down like this. I kind of like the way it looks here. So remember, when you attach two pieces of clay, a little bit of water, not too much, I need to toothbrush where I want it to go, and I need to toothbrush the back. And I need to carefully push it down a little bit to secure it. And if I wanted to put two little nostrils in for my cat's nose, I could poke two little holes there. Now to make the mouth, I can take that extra clay that I have. I don't need much. And this time I can roll it into a coil. And when I roll it into a coil, I can decide what shape I want to make my cat's mouth. Kind of hard to do with one hand. So I could make a calm cat, I could make a sad cat, I could make a happy cat, I could turn this into an O and make a surprised cat, I kind of like the way mine looks as a happy cat. So same thing, I still have to toothbrush where I'm going to add, and I need to toothbrush the back before I add my cat's mouth. I'm going to push down a little bit to secure it. Now I can use my tool and add some details. So if I wanted to maybe make some eyelashes on my cat, I can push those down a little bit. If you wanted to make some whiskers, you could push down a little bit and pull your whiskers. If you wanted to add some details to the ears of your cat, you could do that. Now is your chance to kind of add some details to make your cat your own.